Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Sejal Thacker, and you are coming us live on our newest NoPody, Crossing the Chasm. We have an exciting show for you today where we're going to be really dissecting this concept of what does it mean to cross the chasm, which if you're in the startup world, this is a conversation you do not want to miss. And so our guest today is William Carbone. He's a co-founder and CEO of one of our new co's, Adjacent Possible. It's a company that is pioneering smart patent risk assessment. So welcome to the show, William.
Thank you, Sejal. Thank you, everyone. Hello.
So great to see you again. I love that we got to meet in person a few weeks ago. And when I heard you speaking at our leadership weekly team meeting, I knew I wanted to learn more about this topic of crossing the chasm. So let's just jump right in, William. Can you define for those of us that don't know what that means? What does this concept mean in the context of startups? And why is it a topic that we all need to be interested in?
Right. Yeah, that's great actually, because the crossing the chasm or chasm, people use different
Uh-huh.
definitions for that. The concept actually refers to the difficult transition that the startups face going from the early adopters to mainstream customers, and it goes back into Geoffrey Moore's seminar book that is back in 1991. So what he was saying was that in the early days, the startups often find traction with innovators and early adopters. So those are eager to try new technology and accept shortcomings. But when you scale, the startups need to reach pragmatic mainstream customers who are, let's say, more about solutions than novelty. And then this gap between visionary early adopters and practical majorities is the infamous chasm that these many startups fail to cross. So, coming back to your question, it's why it is even critical. It's because it validates if the product can appeal to a larger, more demanding market segments beyond the niche. It also forces startups to evolve from product focused to customer focused, and it requires building infrastructure and processes so that they can support and serve mainstream customers. Two more points that come in my head are it also determines if the business model is scalable beyond early adopters, because sometimes you just find early adopters and you think that's your market. So for that, it establishes whether the startup can adapt to new customer expectations. So it's a kind of disruptive make or break pivot point of for startups on the path from fledgling status to established market leader. It's kind of it's a rite of passage that can signal a startup's long-term viability.
Yeah, that's really what jumped out at me when you were giving your presentation for us. It's like you often see this happening, right? Where startups, they start off with this small sort of enthusiastic customer base, right? And we all know that in order to, like you said, to achieve long-term success and growth, you have to get past that niche market, right? And so, can you be, I think that this topic is so important, but it's a lot easier said than done to make that cross, right? So maybe if you can, I think it would be helpful if you could share a real life example or scenario from your own experience where a startup has successfully crossed that gap, right? That bridge.
Yeah, I think what we see now, even if it is too early to speak about, but the what Meta is doing, right? They were targeting at the beginning, the Oculus, and then that was a big investment, and let's say they were not having the return they wished for. And in that space, also Google has tried hard with Google Glasses back then, but let's say timing was not right. But then I saw the latest. Announcement of Zuckerberg on Ray-Ban and Meta having a partnership, and that sounds like can be very promising for the challenges and the things that we're going to see in the market. So I would say that's an anticipation of a successful company that will cross the chasm. And I would say generally that many companies, even by eureka moment and serendipitous connection, they found they pivoted from where they were at the moment, and they found their niche market. after experimentation and being so determined to be in the market and serve that type of niche customers. And even on the way, let's not forget that you can find it's something that you will be able to focus on, and that was not present when you started the journey. So that's basically like I know people can Google all the possible successful companies that have done. I think behind every company there's been either a substantial pivot or somehow a bit of a pivot, like in order to get to the right segment.
Yeah, and it's definitely not easy, right? So, what are some, in your experience, what are some key challenges that startups typically face, in this part of the journey?
Yeah. So the startups I see they often struggle with market misreads, and there's a little bit more intelligence now that's in that space, and there is more scaling complexity and a competition. So the strategy to overcome that is always like do a deep market analysis, even IP analysis. We'll discuss later, I guess. Agile scaling. You can work on strategic positioning to stand out, fostering a cohesive team, and even have crafted a compelling narrative that can resonate in a noisy market. So I would say that this blend helps startups to turn challenges into strategic opportunities on their growth journey.
Wow, that's really insightful. I love how you tell us like how we can effectively address those challenges, because I think a lot of times we face challenges, but we don't know how to do that. So let's go a little bit deeper into that conversation. As we one of the areas that's a focus for Adjacent Possible is intellectual property, right? And that's something that's a valuable asset for a lot of startups. So tell us a little bit more about Adjacent Possible, and tell us about how entrepreneurs can protect and leverage their own intellectual property, right, in this process.
Right. So just impossible started with the idea of using patent data to enable people or individuals or organizations to look at the landscape and their technology in a different way and their business in a different way. So you can think of intellectual property as the secret sauce that makes your startup stand out in the market. And it's not just about having great ideas; it's about owning and wielding them strategically. So the first thing I would recommend is always to protect that gold mine. So patents, trademark, copyrights. I recommend startups to use legal shields to guard the innovations, and then it's a kind of a security system for your ideas. So making sure that they're yours and yours alone. And then let's talk maybe leverage. So it's not enough to lock your ideas in a vault. So you're going to bring them to out to play. So you can think about considering like licensing agreements, partnerships, or even collaborations that can showcase your intellectual property. Then it's like turning your secret sauce into a sought after ingredient in the market. Making competitors wonder, oh, how do we get a taste of that? And I guess people have that thing with the Coca-Cola all the time. and when you're navigating the chasm, your IP becomes your kind of guiding star, and that's what IP has been for us since the early stage. So your guiding star is just about not just about surviving; it's about thriving. And your unique ideas can be the map that helps you navigate through those uncertainties, giving you that extra edge. And I would have a recommendation for entrepreneurs like me, as we are still like on the journey. Just don't sit on your brilliant ideas, wrap them up, protect them, and then unleash them strategically. So the intellectual property is not just a legal asset, by the way. It's your competitive advantage. It's your market magic, and I would say to me is the key to successfully crossing that chasm.
Yeah, there's so I'm curious because you you you're the CEO of Adjacent Possible. Can you share some lessons with us about Chasm? And I know that you're still on the journey, but maybe you could share some of the lessons that you've learned so far.
Right. So that was a early in our journey. It was of course, fun as every startup journey. Um, I don't know if you hear me well, but I see this is a bit jumping. You hear me well? It's okay? Hello? Yes?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yep.
It was a bit of a delay. Sorry. So on our journey, yeah, so we weren't sure as every startup what type of market or what kind of customer we would target, and we were actually trying all the possible things. There was this idea of being an idea factory and then create patents and sell them. And also, on the other hand, we were good enough to have developed a methodology so that our consultancy system consultancy methodology will help us to refine and hone in on what we built. So what happened was that we've been practicing our consultancy methodology with different customers ranging from startups, mid-sized companies, and even corporations. And we saw the value of it's more a focus, right? When you're a startup, you want to try everything, you want to try to make it successful, and you have a bit of FOMO. If a client tells you, "Yes, we like your product, we like working with you," or both, and sometimes you have to say no. I think that's the first lessons we learned from that. And also, when you're a startup, you are a limited team, so you don't have the resources of a corporation. And by the way, our team came from a corporate environment, so we kind of were used to have a little bit more resources. So resources definitely a key point in order to speed up things. So one thing that stood me up in the journey was the realization point of let's say optimizing the time. So in terms of efficiency, how can we serve and dedicate ourselves to customers? Let's say 10 customers will be our most successful journey instead of having 100 customers and get crazy with a limited team. So it was more about um, developing that consultancy and methodology and making it flourish into an environment like NoPody Studios. And I would say we were lucky enough to have this serendipitous connection with Mark and NoPody Studios so that we could give a life to what we created and worked on for like 3 years on the first company that was in Finland. And now it became like a company within NoPody Studios, a portfolio company.
Yeah, and what you're saying, William, is really resonating a lot. We've got Raj joining us here today, and I have a great question here. And I'll just put this up on the screen so you can see it from Heba and Danch. And she's asking, William, do you help the innovators during the ideation and design process, or does your organization step in once an entrepreneur is ready to start? How early in the process of creating their business should they be considering all of these issues and protecting their vault? Great question, Heba. Thank you.
Yeah, Hiba, thank you. Actually, it's actually not what we do right now because now we're focusing on creating tools for investors. But in the process, I always recommend to file for patents. So understand early enough where you wanna, where your idea is sitting and protect it. And of course, have the tools and help like a legal team to or our tool, just saying, to help you with that. And we are actually pretty early on in the process. We can help you even pivot. By the way, I need to say that our system is not for founders. Initially, it was, but we found out that it's much more valuable for investors. So we can help them early enough with their challenges. And basically, if you're a founder, this tool can help you to find out if you need a pivot or not, which I think is really great. And as an investor, you can uncover risks or spot opportunities prior to even opening a pitch deck. But maybe we cover that later after. Yeah. So how early in the process of creating their business should be considering all these issues and protecting their vault as early as possible. There are so many competitors there. You better get your security system, which is patents early on.
Yeah, and you've done a great job, William, at sort of kind of outlining what are some of the challenges that people face But just from your own experience, can you share a little bit more about, what should people do, when there's these sort of, when they're making this transition and they're struggling? What are some things that entrepreneurs, investors should do during that sort of growth phase? If you can get a little bit more specific. And Heba's saying, thank you so much. That was so informative. So, Heba, keep those questions coming. We love your interaction. Thank you so much.
Right. So basically, if you look at, so you were asking, just to make sure I was distracted. I mean, this is so interactive here with the chat.
Yeah.
And by the way, I need to say, also part of the work we do within the studio. So we help early ideas to be. We have an idea lab, me and the team and Chiara. So we do that internally, at least for now. So we do still have a bit of ingredients on that space before going into that. So you were asking about the importance of navigating.
Yeah, I was following up on Heba's question in that, we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges that startups face while they're trying to cross this, difficult period, which all startups are going to go to. But if you can kind of maybe outline, what are some of the missteps that we often see startups doing, right? So because we want to encourage people to be proactive, like you said, to get help and really start worrying about some of these issues earlier rather than waiting for those problems to arise. So what are some of the things that we can look out for? What are some of the missteps you see founders making all the time during this period?
Yeah, like it's always like, you can always get ready until you get punched in the face. Everybody has a plan, right? And until you get what I've been observed is that innovators and tech enthusiasts, they often termed as early adopters, and they thrive on the cutting edge. And I think it's very important to make a distinction here, because it's always, at the end of the day, it's the market that is talking. And if you look at the paradigm, maybe you can Google, crossing the chasm. You have this curve. The early adopters are basically the ones that camp out for the latest gadgets and really eagerly embrace new technologies. Maybe you listen to this, you're one of them. And the important part is that the mainstream customers are more cautious, and they wait always for proven value before jumping in. There also can be a difference in culture. I've seen that between Asia and Europe. Some Asian customers wanted to have like 10 references that the technology worked before they wanted to buy it. And then let's say countries like Germany, or depending on the industry, they needed actually to be the first in the market. So there was this kind of distinction, at least in the automotive sector. If these founders understand the distinction, is actually crucial, because the innovators and the tech enthusiasts serve as the test for the product. So let's say there are those who are willing to take the risk and provide valuable feedback. So if you can cater on their needs, you basically can pave the way for broader adoption. And I can also say that on the flip side, then the mainstream customers are the majority. So they really need a clear demonstration of value and reliability. So when the startups that craft the differences can tailor the strategy, so they can also ensure that early adopters validate innovations, while the broader market receives a more polished and proven solution. So it's a kind of dance of appealing to the adventurous few while gearing up for mass acceptance. And in that, of course, you have like a full journey depending on the business you're in and the industry and the type of customers you're approaching. So it's pretty much selective and particular to each business.
That's really informative. And again, he was saying the same thing. She said, thank you so much. That's so informative. Well, this is a concept that I think a lot of people, need more guidance on. And so you started kind of touching on this a little bit more, but I want to go back to adjacent possible and really dig in a little bit more about how does, smart patent risk assessment, how does that help startups during this period? I mean, you started touching on it a little bit more, but let's go a little bit more into that topic, because I really want people to understand what adjacent possible can do for them and how you're helping startups.
Absolutely, Owen. I have a great story to tell then.
Great.
Yeah, so following up on the work that we have done in Finland, so this work helped us to realize the importance of understanding IP, especially at the early stages. And this is because if you see the patent data set with the eyes of a data scientist, then you can also see where certain technological space is heading and what research and development is working on. And often we understand that this insight comes before you see products on the market or even shifts in the market. So this is the power of patents, in our opinion. And with NoPody Studios, we are putting this thinking and our proven methodology that I spoke about before into a more into a product in the hands of investors. So if you're a founder, this tool can help you find out if you need a pivot or not. But as we focus only on investors, right? You can uncover risk if you're an investor or spot opportunities prior to even opening a pitch deck. So as an investor, imagine being able to upload a pitch deck in your system, in our system, and
Mhm.
get an adjacent possible score that will tell you if you could prioritize that investment or not. That's pretty great. And today, I mean, I got a comment on LinkedIn on a random post where I was explaining the importance of IP. And I was very surprised that an investor wouldn't care about IP during pre-seed or seed stage. So that's like, to me, a recipe for to a catastrophe. So I guess it's part of our quest. We have to change not only how investors use IP, but also how they think about IP. And IP for us means so many things. It means data, means reliable data, and the transformation we want to see in the VC world is that they become more data-driven. So that VCs, venture capital, become more data-driven. And we heard gazillion times the story that it's teams getting founded and not startups getting funded. But we are not saying teams are not important. They are. They really are. They're a significant part of the equation and the success. But the other half is having a viable business idea. And I guess that as an investor, having a tool that in a click can tell you if the idea requires a pivot or can even highlight the white spaces, I guess you want to know that while you're still on time so that you can then enable that amazing team of founders to get funded and succeed.
Yeah, and Heba's got another question here that's kind of a little bit. This might be one that's going to take you a while to answer, but it's a good one. So I'm going to put it out there, William. She said, in regards to AI, for those entrepreneurs who decide to utilize AI, right, to create their businesses, which is a lot of people right now, right? Are there a different set of protocols regarding patents and products, or is it pretty much the same process as non-AI businesses? Great question, Heba. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the core patent, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, like whoever is a patent expert as well. I would say that the core patent and product processes are similar, but diving into AI might involve some extra considerations. For example, the aim to protect your unique contributions, where they are algorithmic or physical. And I can say that AI can definitely bring new challenges, but the fundamentals of intellectual property protection remain. And you see also there's an increasing number of willingness to protect assets. For example, even in the Hollywood in the movie industry, there are new companies like movie production companies are kind of forcing their employees not to use the LLMs like ChatGPT and the like, because they would feed the system with data, and then the system would benefit from unique type of materials that should not be in the market yet or should not be read by anyone. And also the editorial industry, like the book industry, is fighting against writers are fighting against the fact that, let's say, ChatGPT used most of their work and it's available online without. It basically could summarize a book. This means that the book has been uploaded in there, and that's kind of creating a lot of issues in terms of copyright, in terms of and all the legal stuff that are around the IP, and more particularly. Yeah, I think if you're working on AI, if you have a system and a method that is solving a problem, AI is still a way to do it, but is for sure, not the only way. But as soon as you're solving a system and a method, and you do it with AI, by the way, I recommend not to use AI as a keyword in your patent application because it slows down the process for such a long
Oh,
time,
wow.
so much. So yeah, just be careful on the terminology there. But to wrap up on that, I think the process is pretty much like there is anyway a patent office that is looking at the application, and there is like a patent engineer, and so on. So the fundamentals of IP protection remain also for AI and quantum and blockchain and all the possible technologies.
I know. And William, here's the, I love that question because, again, the tech landscape is changing, right? And so we have to be agile. And so, how does agility factor into crossing the chasm or chasm, however you want to say it? How does agility? I mean, I think we need to be ready to address tech or AI or any of these things that are happening almost like every day. There's something new. So, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs, or if there's a person that's investor that's looking, to get more advice on this issue? Give us your last words on this topic, and then also please tell us like how people could get a hold of you, because it seems like there's a lot more questions and comments coming in the chat. So if people want to get a hold of you to continue this conversation, what would be the best way for people to get in touch with you as well?
Oh, I think LinkedIn, if you look at my page, and I also, by the way, it's a great question because I just we published the 8th article of my newsletter. My newsletter is covering basically the VC world and IP and founders. So I felt when I decided to do the newsletter that it was an uncovered, or let's say not an explored territory yet to be explored. So one of things is also to I take the opportunity to invite you to read my recent articles once you go on my LinkedIn page. And coming back to the question, actually, entrepreneurs and investors, they look at opportunities during a startup critical growth phase, and it's always about staying perceptive and agile. So I know founders, especially founders, we are also so protective about our product and ideas. It takes a lot of sacrifices and energy to get to the point to get the product to be successful. But between founders and investors, it applies to both of them. If they can keep an eye on market trends, customer feedback, and even emerging technologies, that's great. And so I can tell that the opportunities often hide in plain sight. Listening to what the market is asking for and being ready to pivot or expand can always unlock significant potential. And by the way, that's also why we call the company Adjacent Possible, right? It's your adjacent possible. And then there is, as we are in the topic of IP, there is always that type of delicate dance of balancing adaptability and a robust intellectual property strategy. So before you mentioned the landscape, so in this kind of fast-paced tech landscape, the startups need to be more nimble. So agility shouldn't compromise the protection of valuable innovations. It's about striking a balance, so updating your IP strategy as needed, aligning it with your evolving business goals, and then ensuring it remains a fortress for unique ideas. And sometimes investors are not so willing to protect an idea from a startup because they say, okay, if we spend money on this one and we need to pivot, we lost our money. But don't forget that you can always consider the patent as an asset, and that asset has a value regardless of what the company is performing and regardless of the business is performing. So you can always use it as protection mechanism, but also can be sold separately as an asset. And with that, like the agility is a secret sauce for crossing the chasm. So the ability to pivot is also good in life, right? The ability to pivot based on the market feedback, adapt to changing conditions, iterate quickly is really what propels a startup from early adoption to a mass market success.
Fantastic advice, William. And again, he was chiming in. She's saying, interesting because so many people are advertising courses on how to build an AI generated business, yet they don't discuss the dangers of patent protection. And
So
And she
true.
said, thank you, William, for not holding back and answering the questions. I agree. It is. This is something that, this is why I wanted to get William on the show, is to really talk about those dangers and really about protecting your IP, right? And protecting your patents and so on. So, William, is there anything, any last words you want to add before we end our show? Look at that. We're already at time. I can't believe how
Yeah.
quickly that 30 minutes went.
Oh, thank you so much for attending the show. And yeah, I think there are great lessons learned from crossing the chasm. It's an evolving topic. This is like 30 more years old concept and still very actual, and it will be more present in the future. So I would invite you just follow me and feel free to get in touch. Happy to answer your questions and get connected.
Absolutely. Thank you, William, for sharing your insights and experiences on this important topic. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Everybody, thank you for joining in on this very illuminating. I learned a lot during this conversation, and William gave us so many nuggets of wisdom that hopefully will help you. Don't hesitate to reach out to him. He's on LinkedIn. You can also find information on Adjacent Possible on our NoPody Studios website. We're really looking forward to seeing this collaboration and creating, getting closer to building our goal of 100 companies in the next 5 years. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.